Thomas Frank is the new manager of Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm here to break down his tactics at Brentford to hopefully make you understand what his style of play is and how that can be translated to Tottenham. Now, this is a new sort of video for me on the channel because, I haven't really sort of done tactical breakdowns before, but to be honest with you, it's something that I really enjoy doing. I've done it, I post a lot about it on Twitter, looking at different transfer targets. Obviously, if this is something that you enjoy, please make sure to subscribe and like down below. Join me on this journey. I'm not pretending to be an absolute expert. I'm just trying to look at the data, look at the eye test, build a picture together to see how things can work for Spurs and maybe some other clubs too. So firstly, what I'm going to be doing is heading over to FBref. This is a bit overwhelming, but we're going to break it down right now and kind of get an understanding and an idea by looking at this data as to how Thomas Frank's team play football. Now, we're going to start off with probably the more exciting side. Let's go into their shooting, how they score goals. First of all, what I actually found interesting, as you can see here, is that Brentford are 5th in the league for goals scored this season. But not only that, when you actually look at the shots taken, they're quite low down. They're the 6th lowest with 434. Now, to me, that screams that they are very, very efficient when it comes to shooting. If we go to their goals per shot, this just exemplifies this perfectly. 0.14 is the best in the league. They might not be shooting more than other teams. However, when they do, it tends to lead to a goal. And there's a very big reason for this. That is because Frank's tactics all sort of point towards getting your players in the best areas to score goals. These are areas that have the highest XG. I know a lot of you have just moaned there hearing that, but it's from his words. That's what they want. They want players in positions in the box, which is usually very centrally, to sort of create the best chances for their players to score. And it's working. They're scoring a lot of goals from a minimal amount of shots. And again, this is further exemplified when we look at the distance, the average shot distance from the goal. They are by far the closest. Look at them, they're at the bottom there, they're 20th, which technically means the closest. You can already start building the picture in your head. They're not taking as many shots, but when they do get there, they're creating high quality chances by being as close to goal as possible and as centrally as possible. Here we have a goal create action from a live ball pass. So this is obviously just standard in play, whereas here we have from a dead ball. So you're talking, as it's listed on here, free kicks, corners, throw-ins, kickoffs, so on. When it comes to live passes, they're sort of in the mid-table. They're the 8th highest for goals from passes in just open situations. What's interesting is if we go on to dead ball passes and how goals are created, they are tied first with Arsenal with 11, which is showing a big emphasis on corners, free kicks, basically just set pieces in general, which is what Thomas Frank's teams have been known to do. Now, if we move on to the passing and the types of passing, you really start to build a picture of just how Thomas Frank's Brentford like to play. It's a very direct style, and here are the stats to back it up. If we just look at the total completed passes in the Premier League, Brentford are quite low down. They're the 6th lowest, which is because they're not expected to have a lot of the ball during games. If we look at the progressive passing distance, all of a sudden they jump up to 5th in the league. Now, the fact that the progressive distance is so large suggests to me that they like playing a lot of long balls, and we can back this up right now. If we look at their completed short passes, they're again quite low down in the league. They're the 6th lowest with 5,849. However, if we switch over to long passes and completed, they are 3rd. Now, I just want to say this doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do this at Spurs, because Thomas Frank has had to change the way he plays at Brentford from the Championship to the Premier League. In the Championship, they were a lot more dominant on the ball. They had a lot more possession. In the Premier League, that's not been the case. They had to play a lot more defensive counter-attacking football to be able to play against the big dogs and compete in the league. But this is just how Brentford play currently. And if you need any more sort of data to back up the fact that they're not really a high possession team, just look at their take-ons, right? When we look at the attempted take-ons, they are very low down. Again, progressive carries, low down in the league. This is just not how they play. A lot of their football is based on long balls towards the strikers and the wingers. But just how good are they defensively? That's obviously the next key thing. Looking at tackles in the league, not very high, if I'm being honest with you, especially, tackles won. However, one thing's very, very interesting. The tackles in the attacking third, they are 2nd to Arsenal. This is because Thomas Frank plays an aggressive press with 2 strikers at the top, and they look to win the ball very high up, which is, you know what, to be honest, very, very similar to the early Ange Ball days at Tottenham Hotspur. One final stat before we move on to the actual tactics and the team play that I just thought was very interesting is looking at aerial duels. When we look at aerial duels 1, they are number 1. They are a very physically dominant team in the air. This is going forward, this is defensively, and I think this makes sense because when you play a direct style of football, and from an attacking point of view, when you're playing long balls forward, you need to be able to win the ball in the air, control it, bring it down, or lay it off to another attacker, and then you go from there. They've had a massive focus on set pieces, so they're going to be winning their defensive clearances from set pieces. They're going to be winning attacking headers from corners, from throw-ins. So about 5 months ago, James Allcott did this interview with Thomas Frank, going through a lot of tactical things, and you know what? It is very, very insightful. This is a brilliant video. I urge anyone to watch, but I'm just going to highlight a couple things that were mentioned in this video going forward, just to understand the man and his style a little bit more. A couple of things that I like that he said is that he has a plan A for winning, a plan A-B if they're drawing and need a goal, and a plan B if they're 1-0 down. And another thing to note as well is that he said he plans all 5 of his substitutes for plan A just in case he needs to use them. It's good to know that he's planning on who to bring on when, just to keep that intensity up. Now, for these substitutes, he said for this plan A, B scenario where they need a goal but they're still drawing and in the game, a lot of his subs he would say are like for like position wise. However, what he might opt for is a more offensive player in that position versus defensive. And the example that he gave was if you had a midfield 3 of a 6 and 2 8s, if one of the 8 is a bit more defensive, he'll just sub out that 8 for a more attacking 8. Just to not change the formation necessarily, but to just have a few more attacking players in those positions. Whereas plan B, almost all of the time, he'll opt for a back 3 where the defensive midfielder, the number 6, so to speak, drops in. So it's usually either 1 or 2 centre-backs and then a defensive midfielder in that back 3. And then that means that a midfield 3 is normally made up of an 8 and 2 10s in his words. So it's to create a very attacking team when they're chasing a game. Another thing that I liked was his emphasis on the importance of crosses. Now, this was a direct quote from Thomas Frank about playing against a low block and how important he thinks crosses are. So he goes on to say, in a low block, there's not enough space to do a through ball, not enough space to do combinations. In the last 4 or 5 years, I've been bigger and bigger on crosses. The best area to cross from is here, and that's him pointing to sort of the half space on the edge of the area. And the final bit in the box, we need to hit the gaps. That's the biggest thing for me, talking about the gaps in between the players sort of in and around the box. Now, we're going to get onto some examples later on in the video, but Brentford love to have 3 or 4 players in and around the back post at the box ready for those crosses. And they are very, very effective. Okay, there was a lot of numbers and words there, but let's visually look at how Brentford have set up and what their tactics are in game during the 24-25 season. Now, a lot of people sort of think that Thomas Frank is just this 3 at the back manager, which is just definitely not the case. A lot of this season, he has opted for a 4-2-3-1, which is 1, a good thing because it shows his tactical flexibility, but 2, I think it kind of shows just how Brentford have progressed in the Premier League. Now, what you're seeing on the screen here is a typical lineup for Brentford throughout the season. So this is sort of how the team, I guess you would say, would set up in a 4-2-3-1. But this shape changes slightly when they are pressing high up on the pitch and winning the ball. What happens a lot of the time is Damsgaard almost becomes a second striker alongside Wissa. Sade and Buemo, Janelt and Norgard make up a 4. So it kind of becomes a 4-4-2. And they use this to press aggressively to win the ball back high up on the pitch. And to be honest with you, this isn't very dissimilar to what we saw under Ange at the beginning of his tenure. This is how Ange also liked to press and win the ball back high up on the pitch with a 4-4-2, just replace Damsgaard for Maddison and Wissa for Solanke. Lewis Potter has had to fill in because Rico Henry's been injured all season. Lewis Potter originally is a winger, right? This is, again, another example of how Thomas Frank has sort of adapted his team. Rather than just having a left winger just become a left back and just sit there, he utilizes his attacking prowess. A lot of the time, what will happen is Lewis Potter will go up and Janelt, a lot of the times, will drop in and fill in at left back. And we'll get on to later why that is very important for Tottenham's team. Another key characteristic, and again, it shows the data I was talking about earlier about how they want to move centrally. A lot of the time, Sade and Mbuemo will make runs from out wide to the centre areas, because these are the areas, like I said before, where Thomas Frank and Brentford believe are the highest chances of getting goals. And again, just to further prove this point, this is a brilliant graph that, again, James Alcott did on the Premier League YouTube channel about 6 months ago. It kind of shows the direction of the movement of the sort of passes and the players in the team. And you can clearly see that there's a clear direction heading towards the centre of the goal. A lot of the runs will make their way towards the penalty area as opposed to sort of going round the outside. So the big emphasis of getting in the middle and scoring from high XG chance areas. And as we're about to see later on, they love delivering a ball from this sort of half space here that you see Mbeumo in. Coyote is sort of pushed up, he's supporting Mbeumo, gives the option out wide on the overlap. And Mbeumo is inside, has the ball, and you'll see that there will already be 3 players ready in the box. Sometimes it's Wissa and Sade with Lewis Potter at the back. And then usually there is a midfielder kind of hanging on the edge of the area, ready for any balls to drop down. This image here, oh, sorry, I just realized you can't actually see. This image here, you'll see a lot of throughout the season. And I can think of one player in particular for Spurs that will thrive in these sort of positions, and another one that will thrive in these sort of positions as well. But yeah, on the defensive side of things, it's not too dissimilar to what we were trying to do under Ange. I don't think we did it well enough, but it's sort of this very compact 4-4-2. And Thomas Frank, in multiple interviews, has paid a massive emphasis on having 2 strikers or 2 forwards. So again, this could be, Damsgaard here and Mbeumo and Wissa's here. It's fluid, right? It doesn't have to be set players, but there's always 2 forwards ready to pounce for the counterattacks. That Thomas Frank made that absolutely clear. So if Van der Berg's received it from Flecken here, they'll play it to Lewis Potter, and then they're ready to go on the counterattack. And we'll see that exact example in a second. So it's all well and good me just saying this is how Brentford play, but let's go and look at their win against Man United in a 4-3 emphatic win to really showcase their style of football and how all of this applies in a game. Okay, so this is very early on in the game. We can see here it's 0-0 in the 4th minute. And look where the ball is already. You've already got the width coming from, I think that's Damsgaard and Mbeumo. This is the exact sort of half space that I'm talking about. This sort of area here. Look how crowded that box is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All attacking the spaces in between the Man United players, ready to receive that ball. And the ball is whipped in. Wissa just misses the ball here. And Sade is free to have a move on goal. There is no, if we go back one step here, look at the gap. The Man United players do not know where these Brentford players are. All of them charging towards the box. Again, like I said, a common theme, 3 or 4 of them ready to attack the back post, 1 on the edge of the area just in case it's spilled. Wissa just misses the ball, and Sade has an attempt on goal, which goes over, but this was early in the game, and already you can see the principles coming to life of Thomas Frank. Now, this is an example I kind of wanted to highlight sort of how the individual players play, especially like Mbeumo. So in this example, we actually see that Mbeumo is here in the bottom right corner. He's far out wide. Coyote sort of made this run inside to kind of underlap him. And Mbeumo's now cutting in towards the middle. And you can kind of see Wissa here already clocking the direction he's going in and sees this huge gap between the Man United defenders and is ready to attack the space. Now, the ball gets played through to Wissa. He doesn't quite win it. It's clear. There's been a bit of a collision here. And as you can see from here where Janelt is, I believe that's Janelt. I'm pretty sure it is. It's hard to tell with these bloody screenshots. Won the ball back again. Again, you can see Wissa here sort of attacking this massive gap in between the Man United defence because obviously one player is down. However, the ball doesn't come to him. The ball's gone out wide to Coyote. And look at this. Look at where Mbeumo and Wissa are. Let me just go back a couple of frames here. Mbeumo has started out wide here, drifting further and further in, has laid the ball off, realised that other players have picked up the ball and has made the run right into the middle of the box, the most dangerous area where Thomas Frank wants his players to be. And again, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, all in between the spaces in the Man United players, and you've got Damsgaard on the edge of the area ready to pick things up. So the ball goes out wide now to Coyote. He plays a nice little ball back through to Janelt, who then whips it across, and like I said, you've got 1, 2, 3 waiting, 1 on the edge of the area. This ball makes it all the way back across to Sade at the back post, and it goes in. Also, I just realized I said Janelt this whole time when it was Norgard, so apologies for that. Now, this example I love. This is a prime example of how direct Brentford's football is. So we can see all the players are crowded in this bottom area, all 4 of them trying to win the ball back. Now, as we can see here, we've got Coyote here. He's won the ball. It's kind of flopping about a little bit. Man United managed to get the ball back a little bit again. But again, look at them. 3, 4 players all crowding around, desperately trying to win the ball back, which they do. The ball gets played back to defence. It wasn't the best of passes, but they do manage to recover, get it back to the goalkeeper. And now this is where it gets interesting. The defenders need to be comfortable, and that's including the goalkeeper. Look at the pressure that you can see Flecken under right now. He has the ball, but he calmly plays it out wide to Lewis Potter, and in the next instance, a ball is launched forward to counter-attack very quickly over to Sade, who is absolutely rapid, by the way. Another thing, obviously, what I want to highlight is the absolute pace that the other forwards are trying to get directly to the middle of the goal. I mean, look at the acres of space that Wissa is in. You've got Mbeumo arriving at the back post. Sade cuts in this time, gets in a shooting position. Now, if from what I've read and listened to and understood of Thomas Frank so far, I can actually probably guarantee you he was not happy with Sade shooting from this position, because there's a layoff here. You've got Norgard arriving on the edge of the area here. You've got Mbeumo at the back post. But instead, he decides to take a shot, and it was saved and unfortunately was cleared at that point. But this is just a huge emphasis on just how they like to crowd out, win the ball back high up. But when they do go back towards the goalkeeper, just how quickly they switch it on and play a long ball forward to their rapid wingers and get a very dangerous attack going. Another prime example of just how they love to work crosses into the back post. We've got the ball on the left-hand side now with Lewis Potter, who is whipping the ball in to, let me just change this over so you can see, to these 3 at the back. Again, Wissa, Sade and Mbeumo all in central areas waiting for the cross to come in. Now, this cross gets cleared, but again, Norgard picks up the ball on the sort of edge of the area. Tries to play it out wide on the right-hand side this time, and then the ball falls down to Damsgaard. In this instance, he plays it outside to Mbeumo. Now, this is what I find very interesting, right? Look at his body language here. He's already got the defender kind of showing him down the line. He's expecting him to go down the line. And Mbeumo's cutting in this very dangerous area that they love to have the ball. And look at this. 1, 2, 3. All at the back post again, waiting in the space because they know that this cross is coming from these dangerous areas. Obviously, he managed to create himself a little bit of space here. And then you've got Wissa, Sade, and I believe Lewis Potter ready to attack the ball at the back post. And they do. And the Man United players are just so unaware. I mean, that is actually really poor from Diallo. You can see that the threat's coming from that side. You've got 2 players in front of you here ready to attack the ball, and you're just kind of jogging back into position. But it's too little too late at that point. You've got 3 on 1 defender effectively because Ahmad's already out of the game at this point. And it's just an easy tap in at the back post. Yeah, this is what I've been saying to you the whole time. 3 players crowded in the back post. Balls coming in from this sort of half space, edge of the area type is just Brentford's bread and butter. And then finally, this is towards the end of the match. It is 4-3 at this point. This is a corner that Brentford have. Now, look how much space Wissa has over here, and he's calling for it. All of the Man United players are pretty much in the 6-yard box, and Mbeumo's taking the corner. He lays it off to Wissa because he's calling for it. He's in acres of space, who manages to get a shot off. It was a really powerful shot as well. Now, this was saved by the keeper, went back out into the sort of wide areas. Now, he decides to play it out to Mbeumo. And what's really interesting about this next bit is because of how often Mbeumo has cut in on his left foot and delivered the ball towards the back post where he's got players waiting. You can see this situation where I believe that is Ugarte closing him down. He is sort of stepping inside Mbeumo now because he doesn't want him to go onto his left foot and deliver a crossing because they've been done dirty by that before during the match. But this is where, you know, Frank's wingers are comfortable, just as comfortable going outside as they are going in, because Mbeumo notices this, shimmies and gets ahead of him on the outside. Now at this point, this is very, very unfortunate, but he's got the better of Ugarte and goes down. To be honest with you, I think it was a foul, but it was just, the contact was made on the outside on the edge of the area, so couldn't have been a penalty. But again, it's just showing the cleverness and the willingness to not necessarily just do the same things over and over again. They've got different moves for the attack. So that was all about how Thomas Frank's Brentford team played this season. But now we're going to move on to see how Spurs' current squad would line up given all of this information. Now, I've got to preface this by saying that we might not play exactly the way Brentford do. This is arguably a step up when it comes to the players available. But if we're basing off of the sort of key fundamentals that they do play and how they set up, I do think he's going to go with a 4-2-3-1. And with the players currently available and who we think will be here next season, this is how I see us lining up. Look, pretty standard. Vicario in goal, Udogie, Van de Ven, Romero, Porro. Now, this is obviously assuming that Romero is still here. If not, in fact, that could easily be Danzo in this setup. Very, very physical defenders that Thomas Frank will love. The midfield is an interesting one. When you've got such attacking players like Thomas Frank did here with Lewis Potter and Janelt, where Janelt would cover and allowed Lewis Potter to attack, a lot of times it would create this back three of Collins, Van der Berg and Janelt, allowing Lewis Potter to join the attack. That can work at Spurs on the opposite side. Okay, so my camera's stopped. I'm having to use this one now. It ran out of battery. But yeah, as I was saying, that could work on the opposite side for us because we all know how attacking Pedro Porro is. So when we are going further up the pitch, and I think what would be good is if when Porro joins the attack, someone that I think will do so well under Thomas Frank, and is someone that he wanted to sign last year until we beat them to the signing, was Archie Gray. I can see Archie Gray sort of filling in as that sort of right centre-back in a back three to allow Porro to join the attack, whether that's kind of inverting a little bit, going in the middle, sort of in these half spaces where we know he loves to cross the ball, or if that's Johnson or Kulusevski there and he goes around the outside. When we want Porro as high up the pitch as possible because that is his strength. And when we do that, we need a number 6 that can drop into the defence and sort of create this bank of 3 and 2. Having Gray and Bergvall midfield is very young. I know Bergvall was outstanding last year, but Gray, when he played a few times in the defensive mid position, he struggled a little bit. So I do think it's paramount that Spurs sign another 6 who can do this job as well. But I do think as a youngster developing in the team, I think Gray would be fantastic at sort of dropping in those defensive areas. And remember, he's played right centre-back so much this season when covering a lot of the injuries. So I think he could do that job really, really well. And we sort of create this back three for security. Bergvall, staple, been brilliant in midfield. I think he's the sort of exact number 8 we need. It could be Bentancur alongside Gray as well. But, I think Bergvall for Spurs at the moment is one of the first names on the team sheet. He's been absolutely brilliant. Maddison in the number 10 will absolutely thrive. He will be the Damsgaard-esque player, very creative player. I think he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant at sort of feeding these balls through straight down the middle to the likes of, I don't know, whoever is left wing, Solanke, Johnson. Kulusevski obviously has transitioned into a number 10 a lot recently as well. I do think he can also do a job out wide, and this is the exact reason why. When we saw all of that stuff beforehand to do with how Brentford attack and a lot of these, back post passes that are being made, when you've got your Buemo's out here, like you can see here. We saw under Conte that was Kulusevski's bread and butter. He sort of played in these half spaces, had the ball, and the amount of times he whipped that ball to the back post or even shot from that area. I mean, Norwich last game of the season comes to mind. But if we're taking Brentford's and Thomas Frank's tactics into consideration, you'll see that we're going to see these players all sort of appear at the back post where Kulusevski could cut in. You've got Porro potentially making overlapping runs. Bergvall ready to sweep up something on the edge of the area. The only issue is he's obviously nowhere near as quick as Mbeumo. Whether he can sustain being the right winger for Spurs all season, I don't know. But I do know it's good that we can have the option that we have someone that is brilliant on the ball, can carry the ball up the pitch and operates very well in this area. Our main right winger, it seems to be at the moment, is Brennan Johnson, another player that Thomas Frank wanted at Brentford a couple of seasons ago that we sort of nabbed him from. Now, we're talking about all of these back post runs and crosses whipped in all the time at Thomas Frank's Brentford. Well, that is quite literally Johnson's bread and butter. I wouldn't be surprised if we see ourselves sort of set up with Johnson, Solanke, and then whoever the left winger is, Tell Odebear or Son, or a new signing, crowding the areas like we saw with Wissa, Sade and Mbeumo. and then we'll see Maddison and Udogie on this left-hand side, ready to whip the ball in with someone like a Bergvall or a Gray ready to sweep up any loose balls. Now, I think you'll find more often than not Maddison will be on the ball in these sort of situations, mainly because that's not really Udogie's game. Maddison loves to operate in this sort of left-hand side of our midfield and our attack. And I think this will benefit Solanke a lot more as well. Get him involved in the box, let him be physical, win a few more headers like he did at Bournemouth. I think this could really, really work at Spurs. Now, the main mystery is going to be this left-hand side. There's rumours that Tell's staying no matter what. So we've got Tell, Odegaard, Son, even Mikey Moore as options. That's if Son doesn't leave. But we're also apparently after a left winger anyway, very recently linked to Semenyo. But I do honestly think Tell can do very, very, very well under Frank. I do think he was misused a fair bit at Spurs under Ange. And I think I was watching a lot of, you know, when you get linked to a player, this is what I'm saying, I'm not such a nerd when it comes to this stuff. When we get linked to a player, I like to deep dive into them. I like to rewatch some of their highlights and games and sort of understand what they're like as a player. Tell's best ability at Bayern Munich was making inside runs into this sort of half space around the edge of the area, and I had a lot of shots towards goal and scored a lot playing this way. Under Ange, our left wingers are very much touchline wingers. Tell's ability to sort of get to the byline and make an effective cross in has not been good. I feel like his decision making at the last minute has not been very good at Spurs. But saying that, he's still only 19 years old, and also his shooting ability is very good. I think he just sort of made the wrong choices at Spurs. His shot power is fantastic. Under Frank, I can see him sort of being the left winger and driving through to this sort of space here. Like I said before, Thomas Frank's Brentford, they love to go direct towards the box, not round the outside as much. But I do also think a more experienced player is needed in this position that we can rotate between as well. I know that was a lot, but that was me breaking down how Thomas Frank plays football, how it worked at Brentford last season, giving you an example against Man United, and how I think he would set up with the current Spurs squad. Now, that does leave the big question: who do we bring in to fill out the rest of the team? Well, when I film that video and when it's released, that's going to pop up right here for you to click on right now. But in the meantime, I have also uploaded other videos like 5 Arsenal fans versus 1 Spurs fan. It's absolutely hilarious. If you enjoyed this sort of tactical breakdown and want to see more of this, please do let me know, and I'll see you for the transfers under Thomas Frank.